Write in the comments where you are watching from and at what time, so I can get to know you better. To support the channel for free, don't forget to subscribe and like. They waited until the last witness drew their final breath. Tonight, we unseal a file that was never meant to see the light of day. A ghost in the archives designated only as Operation Sundown. A government program so sensitive, its existence was contingent on the mortality of everyone involved. This is the story of a truth classified until everyone was dead. Write in the comments where you are watching from and at what time, so I can get to know you better. To support the channel for free, don't forget to subscribe and like. Some secrets are only kept by the grave. In the shadowed corridors of national security, there exists a level of classification so profound, so absolute, that it has no official name. Archivists and intelligence insiders refer to it colloquially, in hushed tones, as the dead man's clause. It is not a standard protocol. It is an extreme measure, a final resort for secrets deemed too dangerous, too paradigm-shifting, for any living generation to bear. The principle is terrifyingly simple. A file, a project, an entire event is sealed. Not for 30, 50, or even 100 years. It is sealed until every single individual with direct knowledge, from the lead scientists and five-star generals, down to the janitors who cleaned the labs and the guards who walked the perimeter, is confirmed deceased. It is a classification buried by mortality, a truth held hostage by the last heartbeat. Imagine a vault deep beneath the earth, where the lock is not a combination, but a list of names. With each passing year, a name is crossed off. A physicist dies of old age and obscurity. A former soldier succumbs to a heart attack. A forgotten administrator passes away quietly in a nursing home. One by one, the keepers of the secret, willing or not, are silenced by time. Only when the final name is crossed from that funereal list does the vault unseal itself, not with a bang, but with a quiet, bureaucratic click. The contents are declassified automatically, dumped into the public domain with little fanfare, an information time bomb with a decades-long fuse. This is not a theoretical exercise. In 2023, just such a trigger was tripped. The last name on a list tied to a 1951 initiative, known only as Project Nocturn, was a 98-year-old woman who passed away in a hospice in rural Oregon. She was once a secretary, a typist, who transcribed meeting notes she was ordered to forget. Her death triggered the release of over 80,000 pages of documents, photographs, and audio recordings. For 72 years, this information was deemed an existential threat. The government didn't just hide the truth, they waited for it to die. They gambled that by the time it was revealed, the context would be lost, the implications dismissed as Cold War paranoia or historical fiction. They were wrong. The documents do not tell a story of espionage or military hardware. They describe something else. Something that required a dead man's clause not to protect a nation, but perhaps to protect the very nature of our reality. These pages are a roadmap into a mystery that begins in the blinding light of the New Mexico desert and ends in a silence that is anything but empty. The story of Project Nocturn begins in a place already steeped in secrets, the White Sands Missile Range, New Mexico. In the early 1950s, this vast expanse of desert was the heart of America's burgeoning rocket program. It was a landscape of ambition and anxiety where the brilliant minds of Operation Paperclip worked to push the boundaries of science and warfare. The official histories tell us of V-2 rockets and atmospheric tests, but the Nocturne files paint a different picture. one that unfolds in the margins of known events. The project was not about reaching for the stars, but about investigating something that had seemingly fallen from them. According to the declassified logs, it started with anomalies. During a series of high-altitude sounding rocket tests in 1951, instruments began returning impossible data. Not just glitches or errors, but structured, non-random patterns that defied known physics. Payloads designed to measure cosmic radiation recorded signals that mimicked complex biological signatures. Magnetometers spun wildly, not erratically, but as if tracing the edges of an unseen, massive object that left no radar signature. These weren't whispers among the dunes, they were screams in the data, meticulously recorded and immediately classified. The official reports filed for public consumption cited solar interference and equipment malfunction. The internal Project Nocturn memoranda, however, used a different term: the intrusion. General Douglas Kane, the military lead for the project, described it in a now declassified memo as a non-Euclidean event. He wrote, "We are not observing a craft or a projectile. We are observing a localized rupture in causality." The scientists, led by a reclusive quantum physicist named Dr. Eris Thorne, theorized that the repeated high-energy launches had thinned a metaphysical membrane, creating a gateway, or worse, drawing something's attention. They established a clandestine observation post, designated Site Omega, deep within the prohibited zones of the range. From this isolated bunker, they didn't just watch the sky, they watched reality itself for signs of instability. Eyewitness accounts from low-level staff, previously buried under non-disclosure agreements enforced by the threat of treason, speak of strange weather patterns that appeared from nowhere, of sand turning to glass in geometric shapes without any heat source, and of a pervasive low-frequency hum that caused disorientation and vivid nightmares. These were the first signs that the secret of White Sands wasn't just a piece of technology or an alien craft. It was a phenomenon, an infection in the laws of nature, and the Dead Man's Clause was enacted to ensure that no one who witnessed its birth would ever be able to speak of it. Every story of a contagion needs a patient zero. For Project Nocturn, that person was Dr. Eris Thorne, a brilliant, troubled physicist recruited from the University of Chicago. Thorne was the first to theorize that the anomalies at White Sands were not of this world, or even this dimension. He was obsessed with the idea of informational physics, the concept that the universe is fundamentally a construct of information, and that this information could be corrupted. According to his private journals, which make up a chilling portion of the Nocturne files, he believed the intrusion was a form of sentient data, a virus for reality itself. He saw it not as an enemy to be fought, but as a new, terrifying language to be learned. And he was determined to be the first to understand it. In October of 1951, against the explicit orders of General Kane, Dr. Thorne conducted a solo experiment. During a predicted anomaly spike, he bypassed the safety protocols at Site Omega and exposed a unique resonance chamber of his own design directly to the phenomenon. What happened next is pieced together from fragmented security footage and the panicked audio logs of his colleagues. The chamber did not explode. It imploded silently. The lights in the bunker flickered, and for 4 minutes and 33 seconds, all recording equipment went dead. When the power returned, Dr. Thorne was standing in the center of the room, unharmed, staring at his hands. He was the first subject. The transformation was not immediate. Initially, his colleagues reported a period of intense, almost manic lucidity. He filled chalkboards with equations that blended quantum mechanics with what looked like arcane sigils. He spoke of seeing the framework of reality, the scaffolding behind the wallpaper. But his lucidity soon curdled into something else. The declassified medical reports are heavily redacted. But the remaining text is disturbing. Nurses reported that the temperature in his room would drop suddenly. Security guards assigned to watch him requested transfers after hearing him whisper their full names and childhood memories despite never having met them. He claimed he was no longer just Eris Thorne. He was a receiver, a conduit for the information that now saturated the desert. The project's focus shifted from studying the anomaly to studying him. He was moved to a secure medical facility, a black site within the black site, known only as the echo chamber. Surveillance photos show a man wasting away, his eyes wide with a terror or an ecstasy that no one could decipher. His final recorded words, captured on a wire recorder before he fell into a permanent catatonic state, were not a warning, but a statement. You can't keep a secret from the secret keeper. It waits in the silence. It waits for everyone to be gone. He was the first to know the truth, and the architects of the Dead Man's Claws built it around his silent, broken form, ensuring his terrifying knowledge would die with him and everyone who had ever heard him speak. The final chapter of the Nocturn Files is the most horrifying, for it reveals the true reason for the Dead Man's Claws. The phenomenon did not remain contained within Site Omega, nor was its influence limited to Dr. Thorne. Like a contagion, it began to leak into the surrounding world, and it found a new host. A small, isolated town on the edge of the White Sands Range called Havenwood, New Mexico. A town that, until the declassification, did not officially exist. Havenwood was a community of 128 souls, ranchers, miners, and their families. It was unremarkable in every way, which made it the perfect tragic laboratory. The files show that in early 1952, residents began reporting strange occurrences. Lost time was common. People would leave for work in the morning and arrive in the evening with no memory of the intervening hours. Objects would change location when unobserved. Reflections in mirrors would move out of sync with their owners. These were not ghost stories. They were documented in panicked letters to relatives, letters that were intercepted and archived by military intelligence. Project Nocturn realized their informational virus was airborne, carried on radio waves, or perhaps on thought itself. They had a choice: warn the world and risk a global panic, or contain it, no matter the cost. They chose containment. Under the guise of a chemical spill, the military cordoned off a 50-mile radius around Havenwood. No one was allowed in or out. But this was not an evacuation. It was an observation. The town became a terrarium, its people the subjects of the most inhuman experiment in history. The Nocturn Files contain blurry, long-lens photographs and chilling audio surveillance. They document a town slowly succumbing to the informational decay. The laws of physics grew soft. Houses would appear on the wrong streets overnight. The audio recordings captured conversations that looped, or where residents would respond to questions that hadn't been asked yet. The final reports describe a state of communal dissociation, as if the entire town had become a dream, its inhabitants fading into living ghosts, disconnected from linear time. The last field agent to enter the quarantine zone and return wrote a single sentence in his debrief: They are not dead, but they are gone. Eventually, Havenwood fell silent. The people, the buildings, the very memory of the place was systematically erased from maps, census records, and history. The dead man's clause was enacted not just to hide the science or the existence of Dr. Thorne, but to bury the memory of Havenwood. It was a pact to wait until the last witness to the town's quiet apocalypse, the last soldier who stood guard, the last official who signed the order, the last child of Havenwood who was taken away for study, had drawn their final breath. The files are now open, but the questions they raise are terrifying. The truth was classified until everyone was dead, but the phenomenon they discovered may not have a lifespan. It may simply be waiting in the silence for a new place to call home. Write in the comments where you are watching from and at what time, so I can get to know you better. To support the channel for free, don't forget to subscribe and like. Some secrets are buried not to protect the public, but to protect reality itself. Our story begins not in a gleaming laboratory, but in the frozen, desolate heart of the Alaskan interior in 1957. Here, nestled between jagged peaks that clawed at a perpetually gray sky, sat listening post Echo 7. Officially, it was a weather station. Unofficially, it was one of dozens of clandestine ears pressed against the Iron Curtain, straining to catch the whispers of Soviet bomber patrols and missile tests. The men stationed there were cryptographers, radio engineers, and signals intelligence specialists, all bound by oaths of secrecy. They were trained to decipher the mundane, to find patterns in the chaos of global communications. But what they found in the autumn of that year was not of this world. It began on October 9th at 0317 Zulu time. A signal, so faint it was almost dismissed as atmospheric noise, registered on their most sensitive equipment. It wasn't Russian, it wasn't American, it wasn't Morse code or any known form of encryption. It was a complex looping sequence of pulses and tones that seemed to be structured with a terrifying mathematical elegance. The signal, designated the Chimera by Echo 7's commander, did not behave like any known radio wave. It did not degrade over distance. It did not reflect off the ionosphere. It simply was. It appeared simultaneously on multiple frequencies, from VLF to microwave, a physical impossibility. The initial report, now declassified but heavily redacted, notes the immediate physiological effects on the staff. Technicians complained of migraines that felt like drills boring into their skulls. They reported a persistent, low-frequency hum that no instrument could detect, a sound they felt in their bones. Several experienced vivid auditory hallucinations, whispers in a language that was not a language, the sound of static arranging itself into geometric patterns. The Chimera signal was not just being heard, it was being experienced. For 3 weeks, Project Chimera operated in a state of controlled panic. Washington was briefed, but the information was compartmentalized at the highest, most invisible levels of government. The data was too strange, too paradigm-shattering to be widely distributed. It defied physics. Declassified notes from the project's lead physicist, a Dr. Eris Thorne, state, "The waveform does not propagate, it manifests. It exhibits properties of quantum entanglement on a macro scale. It is not a message from point A to point B. It is a point A that is also point B." The implications were staggering. The source wasn't just far away, it might not be away at all. Then, on November the 1st, at precisely 22:43 Zulu, the signal changed. The elegant, repeating loop ceased. It was replaced by a single, focused, deafening burst of coherent noise directed at a specific, narrow patch of the Pacific Northwest. It was no longer a broadcast. It was a targeting beam. The men at Echo 7 didn't know what it meant, but they knew it was an overture. The phenomenon they had been studying was no longer passive. It was now active, and it was pointing at home. 1 year after the Chimera signal turned its gaze upon the continental United States, the small, idyllic town of Havenwood, Oregon, ceased to exist for 6 hours. On the night of October 27, 1958, something descended upon the 1-200 residents of this logging community. It wasn't an attack. It was an absence. At 9:15 p.m., every light in the valley extinguished, not just the electric lights. Car engines died instantly. Battery-powered radios went silent. Even kerosene lamps reportedly flickered and went out, their flames starved of an unknown ingredient. This was not a power failure. This was a fundamental shift in the local laws of physics. The official story, fed to the national press, was a rare confluence of a solar flare and an atmospheric inversion, causing a unique electromagnetic pulse. It's a clean, simple explanation that falls apart under the slightest scrutiny. Archived eyewitness accounts, collected by local law enforcement and immediately seized by the military, paint a far more terrifying picture. These were not released until 2018, after the last known resident from that night had passed away. One account from a child at the time describes the silence. Not quiet, but a total profound lack of sound. No wind in the pines, no crickets, no barking dogs. A vacuum. Residents who were outside reported looking up at a sky with no stars, an oppressive matte black ceiling where the constellations should have been. Then came the lights. Not saucers or ships, but silent, geometric impossibilities. Lines of pure light drawing themselves across the sky. Spheres of cold blue energy drifting down the silent main street, passing through buildings as if they weren't there. Another witness, a volunteer firefighter, reported that his partner, standing less than 10 feet away, simply wasn't there for a period he couldn't measure. He didn't vanish in a flash. He just faded from perception, his form becoming transparent and indistinct before slowly resolving back into view. The event ended as abruptly as it began. At 3:15 a.m., the lights flickered back on. Car horns blared as stalled engines suddenly turned over. The stars reappeared, and the sound of a terrified town returned. By dawn, the U.S. Army was there, setting up a quarantine under the guise of a nerve agent training exercise. They went door to door, not with doctors, but with men in dark suits carrying thick briefcases, conducting interviews that felt more like interrogations. They confiscated cameras, journals, and any physical evidence. Soil samples taken by a university team weeks later, before the area was declared a permanent military exclusion zone, showed isotopic decay rates that were, quote, unstable and contradictory. The Havenwood blackout was the first tangible result of the Chimera signal. It was a field test. The signal wasn't just information. It was an instruction set, capable of rewriting a pocket of reality. This was the incident that had to be buried under a mountain of lies. An event so fundamentally wrong that the only conceivable policy was to wait until every memory of it had turned to dust. For 50 years, the theoretical framework behind the Chimera signal and the Havenwood event was a ghost, a missing piece of the puzzle known only to a handful of men who took the secret to their graves. That changed in 2008, at an estate sale in rural Virginia. A dusty steamer trunk, belonging to a reclusive physicist named Eris Thorne, was sold for $50. Tucked inside a false bottom was a leather-bound ledger, its pages filled with Thorne's elegant but increasingly frantic script. This was the Rosetta Stone of Project Chimera. Dr. Eris Thorne was a man ahead of his time, a theoretical physicist whose work on quantum mechanics was considered too radical, too esoteric by the mainstream. This made him the perfect candidate to analyze a phenomenon that defied convention. The ledger begins with clinical, detached observations of the signal. Thorne maps its impossible mathematics, calling it a trans-dimensional artifact. He writes, "It is not a signal in the radio sense. It is the shadow of a complex object passing through our three-dimensional space. We are interpreting the slice of it our physics can perceive." But as the weeks go on, Thorne's scientific curiosity curdles into a profound intellectual dread. He begins to understand the signal's purpose. He theorizes that it's not communication, but a form of terraforming, a tool. "The signal carries a blueprint," he writes. "It creates a sympathetic resonance in local space-time, causing our reality to temporarily adopt the physical laws of the signal's origin. The hum the technicians hear is the sound of our universe being tuned to a different station." The entry on the night of the Havenwood blackout is a testament to his terror. He wasn't in Havenwood, but he was monitoring the signal from a secure facility. It focused. The blueprint was implemented. Localized reality failure. They turned a small piece of Oregon into somewhere else. For 6 hours, that town was not on Earth. It was an embassy of another physics. God knows what the inhabitants experienced. What did they see when their reality was peeled back? Thorne's later entries become philosophical, desperate. He grapples with the source. He rejects the idea of aliens in silver ships. "This is not a civilization," he scrawls, the pen strokes deep and angry. "It is something older, a universal constant we have just noticed, a form of cosmic architecture. We are not being invaded. We are simply being renovated." His final entry, dated 1960, shortly before he was officially removed from the project and forced into retirement, is a chilling warning that underpins the entire cover-up. The committee believes this can be controlled, weaponized. They are fools. They are trying to put a leash on a hurricane. This knowledge must be buried, not hidden, but erased. Its existence is a contagious idea that will unravel the human mind's anchor to the world. We cannot comprehend it, and the attempt will break us. To protect humanity, the truth must be classified until everyone who knows it is dead. Write in the comments where you are watching from and at what time so I can get to know you better. To support the channel for free, don't forget to subscribe and like. Some secrets are buried not in the ground, but in time itself. Narrator. The year is 1963. The world is a chessboard of superpowers, and in the shadows, unseen players move pieces we never knew existed. In this clandestine world, names are liabilities and faces are temporary. But one name managed to etch itself into the classified bedrock of history before it was systematically erased: Agent Miller. To his neighbors in suburban Maryland, he was Arthur Miller, a mid-level analyst for the Department of Commerce. A quiet man who kept to himself, whose lawn was always perfectly manicured. But his real work took place in a windowless facility, buried deep beneath the innocuous facade of a federal records building. Miller wasn't an analyst.
He was a pioneer in a field that officially didn't exist. He was part of Project Chimera, a deeply classified initiative tasked with investigating anomalies. Not foreign spies or technological threats, but fundamental breaks in the fabric of reality. His file, what little remains of it, describes him as uniquely perceptive and intellectually audacious. He saw patterns where others saw chaos. On the morning of October 11, 1963, Arthur Miller kissed his wife goodbye, drove his black sedan to the federal building, and vanished. He didn't just disappear from his life, he was excised from it. His security clearance was revoked retroactively. His personnel file was replaced with a single, heavily redacted page. His neighbors were visited by men in dark suits who asked questions not about where he went, but if he had ever been there at all. His last known communication was a frantic, partially garbled message logged by a night shift radio operator. The transcript reads, "The sequence is unstable."
It's not a reflection. It's an... followed by 3 minutes of static, and then a single clear word that still chills archivists to the bone. Echo. What was this echo? What sequence had become unstable? The official report, sealed until 2045, concluded that Agent Miller had suffered a psychological breakdown and defected, a convenient narrative for a man who knew too much. But the details don't align. His car was found in the parking garage, keys in the ignition. A half-eaten sandwich sat on his desk next to a series of complex equations scribbled on a notepad. He left behind his wallet, his watch, his wedding ring. These are not the actions of a man planning to leave. These are the signs of a man who was, in one moment, there, and in the next, simply wasn't. The truth of what happened to Agent Miller is not a story of espionage, but a warning about the doors we open and the things that might be waiting on the other side. His disappearance was not an end, but the beginning of a cover-up so profound, it would only be declassified until everyone who knew his name was dead.
Narrator. In the aftermath of Miller's disappearance, a clandestine internal investigation was launched. It was codenamed Operation Whiteout, a grimly appropriate title. Its purpose was not to find Agent Miller, but to bury him, to erase every trace of his work and the terrifying implications it held. For decades, the records of this investigation were sealed, locked away in lead-lined vaults. But thanks to a series of clerical errors and the relentless passage of time, fragments have begun to surface. These are not clean, coherent reports. They are a mosaic of censored truths, a testament to institutional fear. We have obtained partial transcripts from the interrogations of Miller's colleagues. The documents are a sea of black ink. Take the testimony of Dr. Eris Thorne, Miller's direct superior. Question: what was the nature of Project Chimera's primary research? Answer: a 5-line block of solid redaction. Question: describe Agent Miller's state of mind in the days leading up to October 11th. Answer: he was agitated, but also followed by another complete redaction. The few words that remain are tantalizing. One junior technician, when asked about the equipment in Miller's lab, is quoted as saying, "It wasn't designed to observe, it was designed to resonate." What does that mean? What were they resonating with? Another document is a memo from a high-level director. Its subject line simply, "The Echo Incident." The body of the memo is almost entirely blacked out, but a single chilling sentence at the bottom survived the censor's pen. Containment of the geological anomaly is paramount. All witness accounts are to be classified level 9 and archived until generational expiration. Generational expiration, a bureaucratic euphemism for until everyone who remembers is dead. The redactions themselves tell a story. They are not random. They consistently obscure any mention of specific frequencies, geographical coordinates, and the term echo. They are a roadmap of what the government was most afraid of. The investigators weren't just hiding what happened to Miller. They were hiding what Miller had found. He had stumbled upon something that didn't fit their understanding of the world, and in their panic, they chose to build a wall of silence around it. But the truth, like radiation, has a half-life. It decays, but it never truly disappears. These black bars are not just empty spaces. They are placeholders for a truth so dangerous, so reality-shattering, that the architects of secrecy decided humanity was better off not knowing. They classified the truth until everyone was dead, hoping it would die with them. They were wrong. Narrator. Every ghost story needs a haunted house. For the mystery of Agent Miller and the echo phenomenon, that house is an entire mountain range. The coordinates, blacked out in every official document, were eventually pieced together from Miller's private star charts and astronomical notes he disguised as a hobby. They point to a desolate, unnamed massif in the remote wilderness of the Yukon. Officially, this area is a blank spot on the map, restricted airspace over a barren stretch of rock. But satellite imagery and ground-penetrating radar tell a different story, a story of geological impossibility. At the heart of the range is a structure that defies natural formation. It's a perfect, crystalline lattice, miles deep, composed of a quartz variant that shouldn't exist. The crystal exhibits bizarre piezoelectric properties, generating a constant, low-frequency energy field when subjected to the tectonic pressures of the Earth. This is the resonator, the natural amplifier Miller had been searching for. It is the source of the primary echo. After Miller's disappearance, Operation Whiteout's secondary objective became clear: contain this location at all costs. Declassified engineering reports speak of the construction of the Cage, a subterranean facility built around the crystalline core. Its purpose? To dampen the energy field, to silence the echo. They poured thousands of tons of concrete and lead into the mountain, a modern-day attempt to entomb an ancient god. But the geology itself is only part of the impossibility. Core samples taken from the crystal contain micro-inclusions, tiny trapped bubbles. Inside these bubbles are isotopes of elements that are not only radioactive, but their decay rates are inconsistent, fluctuating in a way that violates the known laws of physics. It's as if time itself is warped within the crystal's matrix. This is what Miller found: a place where the rules don't apply, a wound in the world that doesn't heal, perpetually broadcasting the moment of its injury. The geological anomaly is not just a place. It is an event, frozen in stone. The truth classified until everyone was dead wasn't just about a secret project or a missing agent. It was the knowledge that there are places on Earth that operate under a different set of physical laws, places that remember things humanity was never meant to know. The mountain doesn't just exist, it broadcasts. And the question that haunted the architects of secrecy for 50 years remains: what happens if someone or something finally answers back?
Write in the comments where you are watching from and at what time, so I can get to know you better. To support the channel for free, don't forget to subscribe and like. Some secrets are buried so deep, they wait for graveyards to fill before they surface. Narrator. In the labyrinthine corridors of Cold War paranoia, where the line between defense and atrocity blurred into non-existence, there were whispers of a program so audacious, so terrifying, that its very name was a state secret of the highest order. It was a ghost in the machine of the intelligence community, a project that officially never happened. Its file designation was a phantom, its budget a black hole, and its architects were shadows. They called it Project Chimera. Declassified fragments, released only in the last decade, after the last of its key personnel had passed away, paint a chilling picture. This was not a project to build a bigger bomb or a faster jet. Its target was not cities or armies, but the human mind itself. The objective, stated in a heavily redacted 1953 memorandum, was the development of psychotronic incapacitation agents and the engineering of cognitive contagions. In layman's terms, they were building a weapon that could spread madness like a plague. The architects of Chimera believed they could create and direct mass hysteria, shatter the social cohesion of an enemy nation, and induce collective psychosis from thousands of miles away, all without firing a single shot. The project was the brainchild of Dr. Alistair Finch, a brilliant but deeply controversial behavioral psychologist and acoustical engineer. Finch was a man obsessed with the unseen forces that shape human perception. He theorized that a specific combination of infrasound frequencies, subliminal visual triggers, and mimetic phrases could bypass the conscious mind entirely, directly accessing the primal centers of the brain, the seat of fear, paranoia, and rage. His research notes, which resemble the scrawlings of a madman more than a scientist, speak of finding the resonant frequency of the soul in order to unmake a man. To test these theories, a series of clandestine facilities were established. These were not gleaming laboratories. They were forgotten places, abandoned weather stations in the Arctic, decommissioned bunkers deep in the desert, and soundproofed basements beneath unassuming government buildings. Here, Finch and his hand-picked team of researchers, operating with a budget that left no paper trail and an authority that superseded conventional law, began their work. Early experiments were crude but horrifyingly effective. Declassified witness testimony from a low-level clerk, given under the condition of anonymity decades later, describes volunteers, conscientious objectors, political dissidents, and petty criminals scooped from the streets, being exposed to what was called the signal. The clerk described men entering a room perfectly sane and emerging hours later as shattered paranoid shells, muttering about the noise in the walls and the faces in the static. The project was a chimera in every sense, a monstrous hybrid of psychology, acoustics, and information warfare, created in the shadows and designed to prey on the very fabric of reality. Its existence was a truth so toxic, it was classified until everyone who knew it was dead. Narrator. A truth as monstrous as Project Chimera cannot remain entirely buried forever. In the autumn of 1978, a young, ambitious journalist named Michael Holloway, working for a small syndicated news service, received an anonymous tip. It was a single cryptic sentence on a postcard. "Ask the Pentagon about the music no one can hear." Holloway's inquiries, initially met with polite confusion, soon hit a wall of impenetrable silence. The more he pushed, the more the doors slammed shut. His phone calls went unreturned. His Freedom of Information Act requests were denied on grounds of national security. Then, the pushback began. His sources dried up. He was followed. His apartment was broken into, but nothing was stolen. It was a message. But Holloway persisted, and his investigation culminated in a series of articles alleging the existence of a secret government program experimenting with psychological warfare on unwitting subjects. The story was explosive, and for a brief moment it seemed the truth might come out. A congressional subcommittee was formed, hearings were scheduled, and the nation held its breath. What followed was a masterclass in institutional stonewalling and the art of the official denial. One by one, high-ranking officials from the Department of Defense and the CIA sat before the committee, and, under oath, methodically dismantled Holloway's reporting. They were calm, collected, and utterly convincing. Project Chimera? The name was a flight of fancy, they said. Psychotronic weapons? Pure science fiction, better suited for a comic book than a congressional hearing. They produced reams of documentation proving that the facilities Holloway had identified were benign: supply depots, communications relays, weather stations. They painted Michael Holloway not as a diligent reporter, but as a paranoid conspiracy theorist, or worse, a pawn in a Soviet disinformation campaign designed to sow distrust in the U.S. government. Behind the scenes, a more thorough cleansing was underway. Archives containing any reference to Finch or his work were purged. Personnel files were deep-sixed. The few scientists who had moral qualms and might have been tempted to talk were quietly and permanently discredited or reassigned to bureaucratic oblivion. One key acoustical engineer involved in the early tests died in a sudden, single-car accident on a clear, dry night. The official verdict was fatigue. The denial was absolute and brutally effective. Holloway's career was shattered, his credibility was destroyed, and he faded into obscurity. A cautionary tale for those who dared to question the official narrative. Project Chimera was successfully erased from the history books, relegated to the fringe world of conspiracy forums and late-night radio shows. The truth was not just classified, it was actively uncreated, its memory expunged from the public record with surgical precision. The lie was so complete, so total, that the silence it left behind was more deafening than any weapon Finch could have ever devised. Narrator. Decades passed, the Cold War thawed, the Soviet Union collapsed, and the architects of its darkest secrets grew old and gray. Dr. Alistair Finch, the phantom father of Project Chimera, died quietly in 2011 at the age of 94. He left behind no family, no memoirs, and a will that requested his possessions be donated to a small university archive. For years, his boxes sat in a climate-controlled basement, just another collection of a forgotten academic's papers. Lecture notes on behavioral science, drafts of published articles, correspondence about chess. It was a meticulously curated legacy of a mundane life. But in 2019, a postgraduate researcher named Dr. Eris Thorne was tasked with cataloging Finch's collection. Thorne was not looking for conspiracies. He was studying the history of acoustic science. But he began to notice anomalies. Tucked inside a dense technical volume on Fourier analysis was a series of handwritten annotations. They were numbers, coordinates, and what looked like musical notations, but they didn't correspond to anything in the text. They were a code hidden in plain sight. Thorne, intrigued, began a painstaking cross-reference of Finch's entire collection. He found more annotations, more numbers, hidden in the margins of novels, scribbled on the back of gardening receipts, embedded in chess problem diagrams. For 18 months, Thorn worked in obsession, convinced he was on the verge of something monumental. Using a declassified NSA decryption algorithm from the 1950s, a piece of historical software he found on a whim, he finally broke the code. It was not a diary, it was a confession, a full, unredacted technical and philosophical manifesto of Project Chimera. The numbers were frequencies. The coordinates were the locations of the secret test sites. The musical notations were the precise sequences of tones used to generate the signal. Finch had documented everything, not out of guilt, but out of pride. He saw Chimera as his magnum opus, a work of terrible genius that he couldn't bear to let vanish completely. In his coded text, he wrote, "They ordered me to burn my work, to act as if the symphony was never composed. But a creator cannot uncreate. I will simply hide it in the noise, a signal for a future mind sharp enough to hear it." The confession detailed the project's horrifying successes, including a field test mentioned only by a code name, Whispering Hills. The coordinates pointed to a small, isolated town in rural Oregon that had suffered a statistically impossible spike in suicides and violent psychotic episodes in the summer of 1963, an event that had been dismissed at the time as a localized anomaly. This was the smoking gun, the Rosetta Stone for a history that had been deliberately erased. It was a confession from beyond the grave, designed to surface only when every participant, every enabler, and every victim was long gone. The truth had finally been found, not in a declassified file, but in the margins of a dead man's life. Narrator: Dr. Thorn's discovery of the coded confession was a bombshell in the small community of historians and intelligence analysts who studied such things. But it was still academic, a collection of terrifying data and formulas. It lacked a human voice. The official records were a dead end. Everyone directly involved in Project Chimera was deceased. But Finch's notes contained one more secret: a list of non-scientific support staff, noted only by their first name and a 4-digit identification number. After months of cross-referencing Social Security records and old census data, Thorn's team found a possible match for Eleanor 7134. Her name was Eleanor Vance, and she was 98 years old, living in a state-run nursing facility in Nevada. She hadn't been a scientist or an analyst. In 1958, she was a 24-year-old cleaning lady at the Desert Rock Complex, one of Chimera's primary research sites. She was the last living person to have set foot inside that facility during its operation. Our team found her sitting in a wheelchair by a window, a frail woman with eyes that held a universe of forgotten memories. She didn't know the science. She didn't know the name Project Chimera or Alistair Finch. But she remembered. She remembered the sound, a low hum that you felt in your teeth more than you heard with your ears, a sound that would sometimes make her dizzy and nauseous. She remembered the quiet rooms at the end of the hall, rooms she was forbidden from entering, but from which she would sometimes hear muffled, desperate weeping. She spoke of the young men in white coats, their faces always pale, their hands often trembling. They looked like boys playing with things they shouldn't, she recalled, her voice a fragile whisper. They had old eyes, scared eyes. Her most vivid memory was of a man she called the Doctor. She never knew his name, but she described Finch perfectly, down to the small scar above his left eye. "He never looked at you," she said. "He looked through you." like you were a puzzle he was trying to solve. There was no kindness in that man, just curiosity. Eleanor Vance's testimony provided no technical data. It offered no new evidence that would hold up in a court of law, but it provided something far more important: a soul. Her simple human recollections transformed the coded confession from a historical document into a human tragedy. She was the final echo of a buried scream. The policy of classifying the truth until everyone was dead was almost successful. It was built on the assumption that paper trails can be burned and memories will fade. They bet that time would be the ultimate accomplice to their crimes. But they didn't account for a proud monster's hidden confession, a diligent researcher's obsession, and the quiet, enduring memory of a woman who was paid to sweep the floors. The truth, it seems, doesn't always die. Sometimes it just waits for the last witness to speak. Write in the comments where you are watching from and at what time, so I can get to know you better. To support the channel for free, don't forget to subscribe and like. Some secrets have a half-life longer than any human. In the lexicon of clandestine operations, there exists a final, chilling measure: the Sundown Protocol. It's a classification level beyond top secret, a seal designed not for years or decades, but for generations. Its trigger for declassification is brutally simple: the confirmed death of every individual with direct knowledge of the project. It is the government's way of burying its most profound secrets in the one archive that is truly secure: the grave. Our story begins with the opening of such an archive, a digital tomb unsealed in the 21st century, revealing the existence of a place that, until now, was only a ghost in the machine. Facility X7. Built in the desolate expanse of the Nevada Test and Training Range, its surface profile was deceptively mundane: a series of weather monitoring stations and seismic sensors. But beneath the sun-scorched earth, a city of concrete and steel descended nearly a mile into the planet's crust. Its construction, authorized under the black budget of Project Chimera, involved thousands of workers, none of whom knew the true scope of their labor. They built sections, isolated from one another, their memories sanitized by non-disclosure agreements, so severe they carried the weight of treason. The declassified files, now accessible to us, paint a portrait of calculated paranoia. We see personnel manifests, entire pages blacked out with the censor's ink. We can, however, piece together the leadership triad. Dr. Eris Thorne, a theoretical physicist whose genius was matched only by his ambition, was the project's architect. His brother, General Marcus Thorne, provided the military's unblinking oversight, a man for whom security was a religion. And then there was Dr. Ilara Vance, a bioethicist whose presence on a physics project was the first red flag. Her role, officially, was to monitor the psychological well-being of the isolated staff. Her private memos, now declassified, tell a different story, one of deep ethical horror. The facility's stated purpose was research into non-conventional temporal dynamics, a phrase so vague as to be meaningless. But the engineering schematics tell the truth. They weren't just studying time. They were building a machine to interface with it. The security measures were unprecedented. Staff lived on site for years at a time. All communication was monitored. Weekly psychological evaluations were mandatory. Archival logs from the facility's infirmary detail a growing unease among the personnel in the final months.
reports of shared, specific nightmares, complaints of temporal skips, moments of lost time where an individual would find themselves in a different room with no memory of moving. These were dismissed by General Thorne as byproducts of stress and isolation. But Dr. Vance saw a pattern. She saw the facility itself and the strange energies emanating from its lowest level, beginning to exert a subtle, terrifying influence on its inhabitants. Facility X7 wasn't just a laboratory. It was a cage. And as the final date on the experiment calendar approached, it became clear that no one, not even the men in charge, truly knew what they had trapped inside. At the absolute lowest point of Facility X7, suspended in a seismic cradle designed to withstand a direct nuclear strike, was the sanctum sanctorum of Project Sundown, the core chamber. It appears in no public blueprints. Its existence was a secret, kept even from most of the facility's own staff. Our understanding is pieced together from fragmented engineering notes and the posthumously declassified debriefings of two technicians who helped build its containment shell. The chamber was a perfect sphere, 100 meters in diameter, its inner walls forged from a tungsten-osmium alloy that, according to Dr. Thorne's own notes, was theoretically impossible to manufacture. At the sphere's epicenter, held aloft by a web of powerful magnetic fields, hung the device. There are no clear photographs. Any attempt to capture its image, either on film or early digital sensors, resulted in catastrophic data corruption. Descriptions from the engineer's notes are disturbingly poetic. They don't speak of circuits and wires, but of a crystalline lattice that seemed to breathe light, and conduits that hummed with a non-auditory frequency. It was less a machine and more a piece of captured physics. The final experiment was designated the event. On October 31st at 03:33 local time, the device was activated for its first and only full power test. The control room logs, which were automatically transcribed and time-stamped, provide a chilling real-time account of the final moments. The initial entries are clinical, reporting stable energy levels and nominal system performance. Then, at T plus 60 seconds, the tone shifts. Energy readings spike beyond any measurable scale. The chamber's internal temperature simultaneously plummets to near absolute zero.
Alarms, logged as text, begin to scream across the screen. Causality. Sync. Detected. Whale tensor collapse imminent. The final log entry from a senior technician is a single, frantic sentence. It's not in the chamber anymore, it's in the... The log then terminates. What followed was silence. The entire lower section of the facility, including the control room and the core chamber, was hermetically sealed by an automated failsafe. General Thorne, observing from a command post 5 levels above, immediately invoked the Sundown protocol. All data was locked down under a centennial seal. The official story, fed to the government and the families, was a catastrophic reactor meltdown. The 27 scientists and technicians in the lower levels, including Dr. Eris Thorne, were declared dead, their bodies unrecoverable. Their death certificates, which we have obtained, list the cause of death as industrial accident. The truth, that they were sacrificed and sealed in a concrete tomb a mile underground, was classified until everyone who knew their names was also dead. The only other piece of data recovered from the control room was a single 3-second audio file from an open microphone. It contains a burst of static, a sound described by audio analysts as a chord being played on an instrument that does not exist, a sharp, terrified inhalation of breath, and then absolute silence.
For nearly a century, Project Sundown was a ghost, a whisper in black budget reports, a rumor among intelligence historians. The truth remained locked away, waiting for the actuarial tables to align. In 2023, the protocol's final condition was met. A 98-year-old former logistics officer for the project, who had spent his life in quiet obscurity, passed away in a nursing home. The last name on the list was crossed off. An automated signal was sent from the National Archives, and the digital vaults of Project Sundown were unlocked. What emerged was a flood of data that would take teams of scientists, historians, and cryptographers years to fully comprehend. The first bombshell was a document buried deep in the project's ethical review subfolder, the Vance Memorandum. Dr. Ilara Vance, the quiet bioethicist, had submitted a scathing 300-page dissent just weeks before the event. She argued, with terrifying clarity, that the device was not a machine for observing time but a weapon that targeted causality. She warned that its activation would not create a stable wormhole or a window to the past, but would instead punch a hole in the very fabric of reality. She coined the term ontological blowback, the idea that reality itself would react to the wound, creating paradoxes and logical impossibilities that could cascade outwards from the point of origin. Her memorandum was formally rejected by General Thorne, who labeled it defeatist speculation. He had her reassigned to a desk job in another state just days before the final test, an act that likely saved her life, but silenced her warning. The second key was found not in a government file, but in a dusty box in a university archive, the personal journal of Dr. Eris Thorne, donated as part of his estate. The later entries are a descent into madness and revelation. He writes that the device was communicating with him, not in words, but in pure concepts, showing him fractal possibilities and timelines where mankind had taken different evolutionary paths. He realized in the final days that they had built something that was, for all intents and purposes, alive. His last entry, penned the night before the event, is chilling. We thought we were building a key to unlock the universe. Instead, we have forged a crowbar to pry open a door that was locked for a reason. I fear what is on the other side. I fear it has been waiting for us. The modern analysis of the scant sensor data from the event confirms Vance's and Thorne's fears. Using quantum computers to model the energy signatures, physicists now believe the core chamber did not explode. For approximately 3.7 seconds, it ceased to exist within our known framework of space-time. It was, for a brief and terrible moment, completely untethered from our reality. The truth, classified until everyone was dead, was not that they had a simple accident. It was that they had succeeded, and in doing so had done something far worse than fail. They had invited an unknown variable into the equation of our world, and then sealed the door behind it.
The past is never truly dead. With the Sundown files declassified, the question of Facility X7 shifted from historical curiosity to an active threat assessment. The facility had been maintained by automated systems for decades, a silent sentinel in the desert. But no human had set foot in its lower levels since the day they were sealed. In 2024, a joint task force of scientists and military engineers was assembled for a mission codenamed Janus, with one goal: to breach the core chamber and determine what, if anything, remained. Our final chapter is composed from their helmet camera footage and audio logs, which have only recently been declassified. The descent is tense. The emergency lights cast long, dancing shadows down corridors, untouched by human feet for a lifetime. The air is cold, still, and heavy. The team reports a low, sub-harmonic vibration that their equipment cannot source, a feeling more than a sound. As they reach the massive blast doors of the core chamber's containment shell, their Geiger counters and energy sensors begin to give erratic readings. The metal of the door is cold to the touch, impossibly cold, registering temperatures far below the ambient air. There are strange, fractal burn patterns etched into the alloy, patterns inconsistent with any known heat or radiation source. After hours of work, they manage to bypass the locks and drill a small hole for a fiber optic probe. The moment the seal is breached, all audio from the team is filled with a high-frequency static. The lead engineer pushes the camera through. The footage that comes back is grainy, distorted by a powerful energy field. The core chamber is empty. The massive, complex device that hung at its center is simply gone. There is no debris, no scorch marks, no sign of an explosion. It has vanished. But as the camera pans across the smooth metallic walls, the mission controller points out an impossibility. The shadows in the room are moving. They writhe and coalesce, detaching from the walls and forming fleeting, three-dimensional shapes in the center of the room, despite the camera being the only light source. The team's audio feed suddenly clears for a moment, and the low hum from Dr. Thorne's original recording is now audible, emanating from within the chamber. The legacy of Project Sundown is not closure. It is a permanent, haunting question. What happened to the 27 people sealed inside? Where did the device, a machine the size of a small house, go? Did the event simply erase it from existence, or did it move somewhere else? Is the phenomenon they unleashed still contained within that empty room, a wound in reality that never healed? The Sundown Protocol was designed to bury a secret until it was no longer relevant, until everyone involved had turned to dust. But they made one fatal miscalculation. They assumed the secret itself would die with them. Now all we have are their warnings, their ghosts, and a dark, empty room a mile underground that watches us back